Chris and Chris Talk Movies.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris Ferry, and of course, this is my co-host.
My name is Chris Huddleston.
And today we are both somewhat excited to be talking to you about a brand new movie.
We'll see.
Not to tip our hand.
We will see.
But a brand new movie that you can watch on Disney or in the theater. The latest.
I don't think you can watch it in the theater still, can you?
I don't know.
I don't know, but it's on Disney Plus if you got Disney Plus, or you can rent it, or I don't know, illegally download it. Whatever you want to do with it. I'm not saying you should
podcast first, or don't. You know what? You're the boss of your own life, so you got to do what you got to do. We're going to talk about it, and we should say just before I know I'm supposed to be announcing the film. We are going to spoil this. It's a brand new movie, but we're going to spoil it. So if you don't want to hear us talk about it and the ending and everything else, then don't listen to it yet. And come back after you've seen it, if you see it. But today we are both very excited to be talking to you about the brand new episode of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Oh.
Do you have a synopsis for us, Mr. Huddle?
I have, and I managed to lose my video here, so I can't see you anymore.
You can't see me.
Here we go. I got you now.
I can hear you.
It was just disconcerting because I could no longer see you. Okay, so it's directed by Sam Raimi, and it stars Benedict Cumberbatch, Elizabeth Olsen, Rachel McAdams, some other people.
So right there, it should be good.
Exactly.
Right? Sam Raimi got great cast, great director, right?
We'll get to that. And Marvel Studios' Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. The MCU unlocks the multiverse and pushes its boundaries further than ever before. Journey into the unknown with Doctor Strange, who, with the help of mystical allies, both old and new, traverses the mind-bending and dangerous alternate realities of the multiverse to confront a mysterious new adversary. Okay.
Right.
So
mysterious an adversary if you've watched the trailer, but
so did you watch this in the theater, or did you watch it on Disney Plus, or did you rent it?
I watched it on Disney.
Okay, I did too. So go ahead.
I have a pretty good sized HD screen with a good sound system, so I feel like it did have a cinematic experience, although I admit it wasn't IMAX.
Okay.
So I don't know if you can hear, that's loud in my ears, but I've got the windows open today. So if you hear street noise and stuff like that,
we are
really hot here.
We're getting ready to have what looks like a giant storm. So I hope we don't get knocked out or anything.
Well, we'll talk fast. Yeah. So spoilers all the way through this. So let's see. Doctor Strange is not my favorite facet of the MCU films. I think it goes, I like Benedict Cumberbatch. I think that his wig and facial hair has always looked phony to me, which it shouldn't, because they have enough money to make that not look phony, but it always looked phony. And not so much in this film, but in the first film, his accent I found distracting because, of course, Benedict is, of course, British. And his American accent sort of sounded like a British guy, sometimes on his R's. It sounded a little like a British guy, and whatever. It's gotten better. But
can I interrupt for just 1 second? Because I just to stick on that point. Okay, in the comics, he's an American guy. I think maybe from New York. I don't know. But this is one of these things where it's a character who almost seems like he should be English to me. I don't know why, but I don't think it would made any difference if they just let him be English.
Right.
Who cares?
I mean, I think that there would have been some diehard fans that would have yelled and screamed, but they've watched it. It doesn't really matter. That's a very small
it's a little nitpicky thing. Yeah.
But just sticking with the global thing is like, I've done my CGI spiel and rant, screed, whatever it is, many times. I'm not opposed to CGI, but because this is magic, because he's basically he's a wizard, basically. There's a lot of like yellow circles and beams of light, and that stuff, we've just seen so much of it that it kind of, I find that it's a sort of a lazy, oh, here comes a big battle sequence. And now we're all going to make yellow discs. And now we're opening. The portals are actually kind of cool the way they do that. But all of the like Shazamery and the big rune things, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Now, Iron Man is CGI. That's 100% CGI. But that doesn't bother me in the same way because they're doing CGI to try and replicate something practical, something physical, I should say. I don't know. It's just like when we're talking about now there's a bad wizard. Now we're going into Dimension Z. Oh, no, wait, this is the worst one ever. Oh, wait. No, now we're going to an even worse one. And I think when you start to crack open the multiverse in a movie like this, now I love what Spider-Man has been doing with it. Love it. I love that they crack that open to allow for more diverse casting and different angles and visions and experiences of Spider-Man. And I think that is super duper fun. And I thought that the latest Spider-Man movie, which we haven't talked about, which gets a little
I've still not seen it.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for Disney Plus.
That has a lot of fun with
or whatever it'll be on. I guess I don't know if it's Sony, so I don't know.
But this one, like the title says, the Multiverse of Madness is just everything goes almost right from the get-go. And you're just like, what is happening? And like I say, we've reviewed worse movies. But I was disappointed in this one because I felt like it was a little bit all over the place. It felt a little bit like a hot mess. Sometimes it felt boring, which is not common in the Marvel Comics universe.
And with Sam Raimi, when do you think of Sam Raimi as being boring? I mean, at least,
I did read something online that the production was challenged. Part of that was COVID, and part of that was just changes they made midstream, and they shot a bunch of stuff that they didn't use. And I think I saw a clip of Benedict Cumberbatch and what's her name? Is it Elizabeth Olsen? Who's the woman?
Yeah. She's the Scarlet Witch.
Yeah. And both of them were commenting on how much the film changed in the process of shooting it, which, the performances weren't a problem. It's just, I think if you start doing that in a movie, it's kind of a recipe for this unfocused feeling at the end of being like, now what it just seems a little fuzzy, like what they were really going for. And I don't know. That's my top view. Disappointed.
So to touch on what you just said there, I didn't know that about that maybe things had changed. I had read that there is, people are talking, because now after the Zack Snyder Justice League, like people are going to say this with every movie, but people are talking about the Raimi cut of this that's supposed to be longer, and blah, 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 all that. COVID, they can't do anything about COVID. That's an unforeseen thing. But one of my pet peeves with these giant movies like this, we talked about probably the most famous one of these in recent years was Solo. But how do you get these $200 million, $300 million, or whatever they spend? How do you get to production and you don't know what you're doing on these? How do they, you know what I mean? How are you still?
Well, they do. They do know what they're doing, but they change their minds halfway through.
It gets, and I don't understand how that happens. It's
Chris and Phil knew what they were doing on Solo. In fact, they were almost done shooting it. They were practically done shooting it. And then Kasdan, either junior or senior or both, decided he didn't like what they were getting, and he pulled rank. And they got moved off the picture. And Ron Howard, not a hack, right? Ron Howard got brought in to basically do whatever Kasdan decided it needed to be. And they reshot a ton of stuff, and they changed tone on a bunch of stuff, but they kept some stuff. And that's a little bit why Solo feels like it feels like it's a patchwork of a couple of different cloths, because I think that Chris and Phil have their own sensibility, and Kasdan Howard have their own sensibility, and they didn't reshoot everything, but the stuff that was Chris and Phil's has got that kind of quirky, funny, shoot from the hip, surprising feeling of an ad lib kind of fly by the seat of your pants attitude that I thought was super fun in Solo. And the Kasdan stuff is to me is everything that takes itself deadly seriously. And I was like, did we need a deadly serious? I mean, we had Rogue One. Do we need it? Do they all have to be deadly serious? It's their kids' movies. It's Star Wars. Let's have some fun. But
like I say, I get, Apocalypse Now, a storm wipes out your sets, and then you've got to change things because of that. Or Jaws, the shark doesn't work or whatever.
Right.
But these movies where nothing is real, it's all, it's all computer generated. The tone should all be figured out before you ever, and we've talked about this before, but like all those conversations with those guys should have been, okay, what's your style? Do you like to improvise? Oh yeah, we like to improvise. We hate that. We're not going to hire you. I mean, it makes no sense.
But again, like on Solo, Kasdan didn't hire those actors. That was Chris and Phil. Yeah. And a great actors, in my opinion,
Then you just say, okay, Lawrence, we're going to have you shoot the film. He's a director, but anyway, I don't want to get too far afield on this.
But it was the same thing with Raimi on this. I think that what this one smacked of is he shot it. There is a Raimi cut, apparently. And the studio was kind of like, oh, but numbers and focus groups and, merchandising. And we're coming back for COVID. We need to set up some other stuff. And they started to second and third and quadruple guess it. And instead of just like, look, you hired Sam Raimi because Sam Raimi is great and proven, and he's going to make a great movie, and trust it. I mean, if the movie needs to be a little bit shorter, okay. But I think, again, this is just stuff I watched online. I think that some of the things were like, well, we didn't want Elizabeth Olsen's character to come off as too evil. We wanted to make her redeemable, and so they started to kind of water this down and water that down. I think they said yes. Raimi initially was like, look, if we're going to do this, I want to take certain aspects of it real dark. And they were like, oh, yeah, baby, everything you want. And then they're like, oh, yeah, that's really dark, buddy. And so they, you know what I mean? So what you get is you get this kind of...
That's the thing. So watching this, going into it, we saw the trailers and people were like, oh, this is going to be the first Marvel horror film. And we've got Sam Raimi for this and it's going to be cool and everything. And I saw the trailers and I thought, this just looks like every other Marvel movie.
Yeah.
But I thought, it's Sam Raimi, maybe it'll be cool. And there were maybe a couple of minutes in this that I felt, this feels a little bit like Sam Raimi towards the end, where there's a zombie Doctor Strange and there's these demon things circling around him and going, making noises and stuff. I was like, okay, that feels like Army of Darkness kind of, and you have, a couple of cameos with Bruce Campbell punching himself, and it's like, okay, this is kind of a nod to the Evil Dead movies. But other than that, this felt so generic and could have been directed by anybody. The only thing that I really thought about this movie that I thought was good was I thought Elizabeth Olsen's performance was really good.
Sure.
But she felt like she was in a different movie from everybody else. She's giving this heartfelt, all through it. She's crying and, all this stuff. And it was, somewhat of an extension of the WandaVision TV show. And one review that I read I was going through, like, cause I thought, like, am I just wrong? Like, am I, it took me, I'm not kidding, 4 sittings to finish this, because I would watch like a half an hour or so and I'd just be like, I can't, I got to take a break from this. And then I'd come back to it. And like yesterday I started it up again and I thought I had like 20 minutes left and I had 54 minutes left. And I was just like, I don't know if I could do 54 more minutes, but we talked about WandaVision at the time that it aired, and we both really liked it until, the end, where it just devolved into another Marvel thing.
Boss fight.
But a review that I read on IMDb, somebody was like, I don't know if somebody who hadn't watched WandaVision this is going to be meaningless to them, and all this emotion with these kids and stuff. They're just going to be like, I don't know what any of that
see
is.
WandaVision, and she's like, oh, I gotta save my kids, and you're like, kids? You know what I mean? Like, if you didn't watch, how many episodes was it? 8? So if you
8
watch
or whatever,
this entire TV string, that seems like a real math problem to me. Like, there's no, and they don't even, it's a long movie. They don't even spend any time expositionally or flashbacky, like setting that up. You're just, oh, I guess she has kids now. Did I fall asleep during one of the Avenger movies or what, But I didn't have as negative a response to this movie as you did. It didn't.
To be honest, I kind of hated this.
I watched it all in one sitting. I mean, it wasn't, I sat through Kill and Kill Again. That was hard.
Yeah, that's
like, do I have to watch this?
I will say, when people, in a hyperbolic way, when people say, movie X was the worst movie I've ever seen, none of these movies are the worst movies that you've ever seen. They're technically, I say the only thing that is good about this is Elizabeth Olsen's performance, but like Benedict Cumberbatch is fine, and the rest of the actors are fine.
I think,
bad movies are, the boom mic is in the shot and stuff like that. But on the other hand, there's no reason to me for a $200 million movie to not be better than this. It's just, the word that comes to mind for me is soulless. It just feels like, right before we recorded, I went to Taco Bell. I don't go to Taco Bell a lot, but I need to go to the grocery store, and it's just like, I don't have anything that I feel like eating. I'm going to go to Taco Bell. You go to Taco Bell or McDonald's or whatever, you eat the food. But this week, if somebody says to me, what did you do this week? I'm not going to say, wow, I went to Taco Bell and I had this great meal there. You know what I mean? And that's how these movies are getting to feel to me. They're just a product. And, this made almost $1 billion. So it's a product that is obviously a whole lot of people are happy with.
Right.
But it's just, I can't imagine, and we talk about CGI and everything. And I was thinking about other films, like, films that I've really liked in recent years. X-Men Days of Future Past, that has a lot of CGI in it. I liked that movie. I enjoyed it. Or Logan, or people crap on Prometheus a lot, but I think we both like Prometheus. There's a lot of CGI. So it's not like I'm opposed to these movies, but I can't imagine anybody in 20 or 30 years, unless they saw this when they were 5 or 10 or whatever, caring anything about these movies. I mean, They're just to get you to the next thing.
Right.
They're just mass produced. They're not, you know what I mean?
I do. And I think that, so I was really on board with the Marvel universe, cinematic universe, that first 10 years. There's a decade when they starting with Avengers. And that's a huge slew of movies, right? Marvel Studios, it's just Marvel movies. I mean, they have created a studio that is a big hitter in the industry just on those comic book materials and making it all the same universe. They're not all my favorite, but they did build up to that big Thanos plot line there, where the last, 2 movies, 3 movies, 2 movies, I guess, were about everybody showing up in the same movie, from Ant-Man to Hulk to Spider-Man to everybody, right? They got Guardians of the Galaxy. They got everybody in there. Big rock ending, and then they retired a number of characters. Now they're in what they call phase 2, or maybe even phase 3. I don't know where they are now, because it all now just got diffused. It's like everybody else, they're like, let's make some more movies because we're laying golden eggs and we're printing our own money. I mean, you can't say that, that they're not doing that. I mean, they're making money, but I'm just not. I used to wait when another summer was coming around and another one of them. I couldn't wait to go see one of those movies. And that, I mean, I watch them now because I'm into it, and I'm into movies, and I'm a comic book guy, but I'm sort of not excited about it anymore. And I felt that way about the second Thor movie, Thor World of Darkness or whatever. I was kind of like,
okay.
what is it? What are we doing here? I haven't seen Love and Thunder yet, though. That
Ragnarok I really enjoyed.
Ragnarok was a lot of fun.
It has all the CGI
Because
stuff
it
in
took
it
some
too.
chances. Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
it was silly fun. It was juvenile and corny, and it got to showcase. It didn't take itself too seriously, and that's what I loved about the Guardian of the Galaxies movies too. Is mostly just clowning. It's a bunch of clowns. Yeah, and you get to the end and you care, and they have to beat the bad guy, and you think they're not going to make it, but they do, and hooray. It's still formulaic, but most of the movie is just this screwball silliness, and I think that's perfect for a comic book movie. And I think that the screwball silliness in this film felt a little bit strained, although I loved Xochitl, what's her name, who plays America?
I don't know how to pronounce the name.
She was terrific. I thought she was just absolutely
she's fine.
dynamite.
I mean,
I thought it was really refreshing to see a new face. I thought there was a scene where they're sitting there getting some pizza, and she gets to be the kind of snarky one that outsnarks Doctor Strange. I thought that was really fun. And
they had some chemistry, so
yeah,
that was fine.
And she is 16 years old, and that's just a movie star right there. Campbell loves her. I thought she was great. And there was some other stuff in this movie that I did think was fun. He goes into one alternate reality, and there's like, I don't know, they're not the Avengers, they're the Illuminati, right? And it's a bunch of other Marvel characters, Professor Xavier, and it's Reed Richards, and you know what I mean? And I thought he wasn't there long, and all of those people just get absolutely toasted by the Scarlet Witch in about 10 minutes. Did you freeze?
So you see Professor Xavier, and I felt like, wow, I wish I were watching another X-Men movie, because I thought those, for the most part, a couple of them are bad, but I really liked the X-Men films. I thought they were, and I was actually talking with a friend and about who's just like, I'm totally burnt out on the Marvel stuff. And she said, I just happened to watch the first X-Men, the one from 2000, that was really kind of the, I mean, Iron Man gets attributed to, I mean, it started up really this MCU stuff, but kind of X-Men was kind of the first, okay, this new wave of superhero stuff. And she said, it's really interesting to watch that now, how little CGI in that is. And not to harp on the CGI stuff, but like there's a scene in this where he's walking up a staircase, it's like his house, but it's in the alternate universe, so it's like all torn apart and everything. And I could tell that it was they presumably were just CGI, or not CGI, but just green screen steps, and they did a CGI staircase. And it's like, you can't build a staircase, I mean, it's like everything in this is CG, to where I was just at the point where I was noticing like, oh, they're sitting in a chair and that's an actual chair. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even times when they're walking around in the city, you could tell it was just a backlot. And I texted you about when we see him as the zombie Doctor Strange, the zombie makeup doesn't look good. And it's just like, what are they spending the money on with these films? I mean, I know the actors at this point are getting a lot of money, but it's just like, where does all this money go?
Right.
Because it's not even like we come back to this a lot, but how is it that Dune can look pretty much photorealistic, and none of this stuff is real, these ships and everything? It's just, for me, you watch these things and it just feels like you're watching a video game.
Well,
And I just feel so unconnected to it.
I think that
I hope that thunder and stuff's not coming through because it's storming really
I
bad.
hear it a little bit, but it's not bad.
Okay.
I think that Denis Villeneuve was really swinging for a home run with Dune. I think he really cared and he was really hands-on with it. And there was no guarantee that he was even going to get to finish the story. Whereas Sam Raimi doesn't need this. Denis Villeneuve probably didn't need that either, but Sam Raimi doesn't need this. Sam Raimi's been doing a long time. Sam Raimi could retire 10 years ago and Sam Raimi's be fine, right? So I think they threw him a lot of money, like you can't refuse money. I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing. And he's like, okay, well, I get to put Bruce in it. And they're like, fine. And I get to make it really dark. And they're like, fine. Of course, they reneged on that, And I just think it doesn't feel like, would you be excited to make the second Doctor Strange movie? Like, oh, me, please let me make it. I mean, it's a big career opportunity, but it feels like, look, we have to make another Doctor Strange. How are we going to make this good? Okay, it's multiverse. So it's even like he can already multiverse around. Like that's what made the first movie so stupid. It was just like, now we're going into planet zone Y. Now we're going into zone Z. And you're like, it doesn't matter. There's like a zone double Z. It just gets crazier and crazier. The threat is so overwhelming. It's not the end of the world. It's the end of entire existence. And you're like, well, I can't get my head around that. How are those stakes? I mean, we know he's going to win. We know Doctor Strange doesn't lose. So why do I care? And this one felt like that too. It's like multiverse. And then he reads the Book of the Dead. And then he's got like a third eye, which is supposed to mean something if you read the comics. Like the curse is still in him. I'm like, what? And that third eye on his forehead looks terrible, by the way. It looks terrible.
Yeah.
It looks like somebody with a filter just pasted. It looks terrible. And I'm just kind of like, what is happening? But I did think it was cool that I thought it was cool that they brought Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four in. I thought it was pretty cool that they brought the Moon guy in. And Professor X is the first.
Who was the Moon guy?
He's one of the, I don't know if they're called the Eternals or something. They live on the dark side of the moon, and he's the leader. Okay. He's the guy with a pitchfork on his forehead.
Okay, yeah.
Any sound he makes carries this.
And then she just took his mouth away. I thought that was.
And then his head exploded. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
But I mean, she just makes hamburger meat out of those guys the second she walks in, and I'm like, oh, I wanted to kind of see them. I liked Captain. What did they call her?
Captain Britain or whatever she is.
Yeah, but they didn't. It wasn't Captain Britain, right? It was.
But she's the British version of Captain America.
Yeah, I love her. I love that character, and we saw that a little bit in What If, and so I mean, I thought those elements of the movie were fun. I thought that the fact that this movie was like anything goes, took the opportunity in a few places to have some fun with it. I thought him, like we've said, him coming back into the dead body of himself from another. I'm like, awesome. I didn't like the execution of it. I think you're right that the CGI looked really lazy and sloppy. And if they'd have done some sort of a practical effect on Benedict Cumberbatch, he would have had to act undead in a way, and he didn't. It was just he was still all wearing the dots, and they just did something different on him, and it did give the feeling like this was a movie full of people who weren't really trying all that hard.
I thought about that a good bit. I thought, these guys, like these directors like Raimi and Tim Burton, who did some really great stuff in the 80s and 90s. I can't imagine, that if you could sit down with them and have a drink and just be like, do you get to these movies get finished and you're like, wow, we did a great job, we nailed it or whatever. And I mean, I'm sure from the standpoint of, they're working with these people, and I'm sure nobody is just like, who cares? We're just going to do, phone it in or whatever. I'm sure nobody is like that. And I think we as film fans are looking at it like from an art standpoint and an artist standpoint, and think like, wow, if we got an opportunity to do this, we'd be so passionate about it and everything. And I'm sure there are
but you wouldn't get passionate about the second Doctor Strange movie.
Right.
What I'm saying is the property itself just feels like more sausage out of the mill. It's just a sequel.
There are a couple.
Was anybody sitting around for the first one being like, well, I can't wait until they do the Multiverse of Madness? No,
there are a couple of famous Beatles stories that Paul McCartney supposedly said he wanted a new swimming pool for his house, and he sat down to write, I don't know what song it was, but he sat down to write something, and he was like, well, I'm going to write a new swimming pool today, and John Lennon, when he lived in England, there was a guy who they, like, on his estate, they discovered that a guy was like camping out like on his property, and they found the guy and they brought him to the house, and John was like, come on inside, and the guy hadn't eaten for a while and stuff, so he gave him some food and sat down and talked to the guy, and the guy's asking him all these questions about different lyrics that really spoke to him, and he was just like, yeah, sometimes the lyrics meant things, and he said sometimes it just rhymed, it didn't really mean it, because it was, this guy obviously had problems and felt like, he was kind of like speaking, and he was like, we weren't always, some of it was just stuff, because people would buy it or whatever. And I'm sure that with a guy like to do maybe still at this point, but he'd have to pay for it himself, or beg for money to get $10 million or whatever. So it's just like, they pay me a bunch, and it makes $1 billion, so it did what it was supposed to.
Nobody making this movie isn't at the top of their game,
right?
I mean, I think so. We hold this one to a little different standard. So if I've got a local filmmaker here who shoots a movie on $15,000 in 2 weeks, and it's watchable, and if it's better than watchable, it's actually interesting, and it makes me feel something in a couple of places, that's a Herculean undertaking. Like, that is really remarkable. These folks like Sam Raimi, I mean, these are people at the top of their game, and I just feel like one of the things that was remarkable about the first 10 years of the Marvel Studios movies was, with a couple of little wobbles, like Age of Ultron, I think the writing was so great in that one. They were really driving towards an endpoint, collectively and then individually on the film. And this just feels like it's well, you had to watch WandaVision. They assume everybody's watching everything, and they're making it just for the super fans. And I'm like, yeah, but what if, your kid is a super fan and you take your kid to this movie? I'm just left out of it because I didn't watch WandaVision and whatever. Like, doesn't this sequel to one little branch of the Marvel Cinematic Universe have to stand on its own as a good film? And again, I mean, it wasn't, you hated it. I didn't hate it. I just was hoping for more. I thought, ooh, Sam Raimi, a multiverse, and demons, that would get kind of good. And then it was kind of like, oh, well, and it just felt like a letdown. I mean, I didn't throw
and
my
Raimi,
scream and rage that it was so terrible. I just thought it was a disappointment.
To not totally let Raimi off the hook. And you don't know at this level how much maybe they're getting interfered with everything, but he did Spider-Man 3, which was pretty bad. I never saw the Oz movie that he did. I just thought it looked awful, and I didn't watch it. So it's not like he's doing a lot of great work these days. But on the other hand, we reviewed Drag Me Drag Me to Hell, which was, sometime in the 2000s. I forget
Yeah.
exactly when that came out. And that's a lot of fun and,
Yeah.
feels very much, but it probably cost 30 or 40 million dollars or whatever. So it was just like, yeah, he was able to do probably, there probably wasn't much meddling with that. They're probably just, hey, do whatever you want,
And honestly, if he had been an independent filmmaker, I mean, Sam Raimi can't make a non-union film, but he probably could have made that movie on $150,000. Whether or not he would have gotten those exact actors or not, he probably could have made Drag Me to Hell on 150 grand if he'd have made it as a completely non-union independent movie. It was not dependent on the effects or anything else. It was just the story. You know what I mean? And I think that's what made it. It was all his style and taste and his writing, and that's what made it such a delightful movie. Is it was a relatively small undertaking that everybody committed hard into.
Yeah. And he can do whatever he wants, and I'm
Sure.
sure there are some, I think about myself, there haven't been a whole lot of times in my life that I have done work that I was incredibly passionate about. Now, I haven't worked in really creative fields, but it's just kind of like they pay you and and you do your work or whatever. So, and I can imagine, if somebody wanted to give me millions of dollars to do a movie that I wasn't particularly crazy about, I mean, I would jump at the chance to
Sure.
do that. But I do kind of like the filmmakers that it's kind of like one for them and one for me. I would love to see Sam Raimi do some more. I mean, he's just producing, he's not directing it, but there's going to be another Evil Dead. So, he and Bruce Campbell are, real involved with, but, and, he did the not Army of Darkness, but the Ash versus Evil Dead show. So, I mean, presumably that was something that he was into, since that was his creation and everything. But I don't know, it just you kind of wonder, they had that whole build up to the Avengers stuff and Thanos and all that stuff, and it's just, can you continually be building towards some huge thing? That's one of my real criticism of this MCU stuff is it would be nice to have more self-contained stories, but also that are in a bigger story arc, because they've got the and I don't know what that's gonna be, but at the end, the post-credit thing, you have Charlize Theron show up to open some portal or whatever, and
Right.
I don't know what character she is.
I don't either, and I have to tell you, I could care less.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, Charlize Theron shows up in like a purple suit, and I'm like, pass. I and it's not that I don't like Charlize Theron or think she's a bad actress. I'm just like, I guess next we'll have Tom Cruise in here. And now it's just everybody we can get for a cameo to do some baloney. Like, we're now in these backwaters of, part of it for me was part of the problem of the Avengers is quantifying different power levels, right? You've got Thor, who's like a god, basically. And then you've got Thanos, who's like a god, who's got a glove that supposedly allows him to do anything. So how are you going to stop Thanos? And then you got the Hulk, who is kind of he's a mutant, but a made mutant, but supposedly he's, he fights Thor and they're on equal footing. Okay. And then you got Iron Man, who's just got a really fancy piece of technology, but how is that any match? And yet in the movies, it somehow is. And then you've got Captain America, who's he's had a serum that's made him sort of superhuman, but like the Hulk superhuman? I can't be, right. They can't all be of a level. And they got Hawkeye, who's a guy who shoots arrows. Mm-hmm. And Black Widow, who is a spy who knows great martial arts. I mean, they don't have any superpowers.
Yeah.
And then you go out in the galaxy, and then there's all kinds of other species, you know, Thanos and the Chitauri or whatever, and all these people. And then you're like, oh, but meanwhile on Earth, we've got Doctor Strange, who can open dimensional rifts and control time. I guess he lost the time stone or whatever, but you're kind of like, wait, what? So how come he can't just stop? I mean, he can literally go back in time. Why doesn't he just fix it?
Mm-hmm.
Where's he been this whole? Isn't he protecting the whatever? They have the whole Avengers without him. I guess at the end they find him, but I'm like, where's he been? There's been, right? They invaded New York in the first Avengers movies. Where's Doctor Strange? He lives there. He couldn't have helped out in some way. It's just,
Yeah.
I know if you think about it too hard, it falls apart.
Right.
It's just like you keep introducing these characters like a new threat, bigger than the other. We've already done apocalyptic universe-ending threats, and this one's bigger.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna bigger end the universe and a bigger end. You're just kind of like, I don't know. You just get exhausted after a while.
Oh yeah. And talking about introducing characters, so you talked about Reed Richards, and I'm sure, people that saw this opening night or saw preview screenings or whatever, that it was like, yeah, it's Reed Richards, and this is going to set up now now Marvel has the rights to the Fantastic Four, so they can do a Fantastic Four movie. And Fantastic Four was one of my favorite comics as a kid. I loved Fantastic Four. And, always thought, I can always remember as a kid thinking, if they would ever do an X-Men movie, that would be amazing. And I just always thought, oh, they're never going to be able to do that. It'd be impossible. And if they do a Fantastic Four movie, it would be amazing. And, so far the Fantastic Four has not been amazing. The movies have been bad. But it's like I say, I'm sure people in the theater cheered when they saw him and everything. And I just didn't feel anything. You know what I mean? And it's just, if they would, I think you could do a really great, get a really visionary director and let them do their thing. And I think probably the closest that we've had to this, and, I think I said before, I haven't seen the new one, but Taika Waititi doing Thor Ragnarok was definitely, it felt different. And I guess you could say the same thing with Guardians of the Galaxy with James Gunn. So they let him, kind of do his thing. But, put a really kind of a visionary director on Fantastic Four and, just say, it doesn't have to look like all of the other movies, but we are going to make Fantastic Four just really, but I just figure it'll be another generic thing,
I think there's a problem with Fantastic Four
it would definitely not be easy to adapt. That's,
that is Reed Richards is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a stupid superpower. He's plastic.
Yeah, it's kind of lame,
man. It's just the dumbest, and in a comic, he was a dorky genius nerd. And so if he could reach under a door and unlock it from the other side, you were just kind of like, okay, we'll go with it. They got the rock guy, they got the fire guy, they got the invisible girl, and they got the rubber guy.
Mm-hmm.
But on screen, trying to take it seriously where somebody goes, it's just stupid. It's a stupid power that looks stupid when you try and realize it off the pages of a comic book. And, Wolverine, not stupid. Somehow blades coming out of his hands looks cool on screen, and it's not the performance, although I think what's his face did a great job as Wolverine. I just, and John Krasinski's a good actor. I don't have a problem with him. I just think it's the power itself is like, oh no, we could do it with CGI. It's just gonna look stupid. It's just going to look stupid. So that's all you do. We're falling. I'm going to form a parachute out of my mouth. It's dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
it works in a comic.
They tried making a couple of Fantastic Four movies. They sucked.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert. They're terrible.
And, Dr. Doom is an awesome villain. So you could do, he doesn't even have to be with the Fantastic Four, but put Doctor Doom in, do it right. Because he's kind of Darth Vader,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I read a week or so ago, and I'm sure they won't do it because they'll say he's too old or whatever, and he's Captain America. But Chris Evans in an interview said he's like, I'd play the Human Torch again, if they'd let me. He's like, I'm 15 years older now or whatever. But he was, those movies were bad, but he was fine.
They wouldn't do that because he's Captain America. That doesn't make sense. But
it would confuse people, I guess. But
you have said it in the past. Yeah, if they made a Secret Wars, I mean, if you're going to do multiverse and you're going to do Spider-Verse, I mean,
I can't imagine, that might be their plan.
You could do a trilogy of Secret Wars movies. And if you let somebody like Taika Waititi or James Gunn, or you really let someone off the leash with those, James Mangold, that guy makes a good movie. I waited. Logan is just a rated R Wolverine where he basically just takes people apart with those claws. From the minute I saw that character on screen, I have wanted him to lop arms off. Like, he is a vicious killer with those claws, and they cut through anything. And until Logan and those guys early in the movie, I think it's the hook of the movie. Those guys jump him and are boosting the wheels off of his limo that he drives. And, they shoot him in the chest with a shotgun, and he just makes deli meat out of him. And I'm just like, that's what I'm talking about with Wolverine, baby, Oh,
yeah. Yeah. Secret Wars. I mean, and I'm sure it's, they have it planned for phase 7 or whatever, but
cut to
Secret
the chase,
Wars.
I say.
What's that?
Cut to the chase, I say. Let's just do it.
Yeah, Secret Wars I don't know what they're waiting for. Secret Wars, you don't have to set anything up. You put all the all the superheroes on a planet,
And now we've established the multiverse where it's like, oh, that's a different universe. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. That's like universe 6028 or whatever. They have numbers for them. Like, some people are keeping track. I guess some people are. Earth 827. Like, okay.
I'm sure that, there's no way that they're not planning Secret Wars, but I'm sure they probably figure that they have to, do an X-Men movie, and a Fantastic Four movie and all that before they can do Secret Wars.
The problem with the X-Men movies, and even the Days of Future Past and the original X-Men, like, I enjoy those, and James McAvoy and Fassbender, that whole cast. I like that cast. But once you've seen, and you saw it in this movie, how old he is. But once you've seen the Professor Xavier as played by
Patrick Stewart,
you're kind of like, and it's nothing against James McAvoy, but you're like, we got a Professor X, so you're going to cast some other, probably James McAvoy again, some young bald guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not, I don't know, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
You can have another Wolverine, you're going to do something, because Hugh Jackman's done. He's like, I can't get in that kind of shape anymore. It's
right.
hard.
And that's, we've talked about this a lot. And this is, one of my big pet peeves with these is, and it's just for them to have more movies, but before they can do Secret Wars, they're going to have to do a, like I say, an X-Men solo movie, which everybody knows who the X-Men are at this point. And, they're going to do a Fantastic Four origin movie. But like you said, it's a stretch guy, a rubber guy, a rock man, an invisible woman, and a guy who turns into flames. You don't have to introduce them.
Right.
You could put them in another movie.
Right.
They don't have to, you know what I mean? It's just
and
like,
they also kind of feel like, so the Human Torch is iconic, just like Iceman is iconic. It's a primordial thing, right? The rock guy, isn't that just a poor man's Hulk? Yeah. I mean, what? He's big and pretty invulnerable and really strong. We got that guy. He's green. He's already cooler than you are. The Invisible Girl, you could have some fun with that. That could be fun. We don't have an invisible character per se, but that's it. That's all she does. She doesn't camouflage. I mean, Mystique she can make herself look the same color as the wall. So what's the difference? She's effectively invisible.
And when Stan Lee and these other guys were coming up with these characters, they were just trying to sell comics each month.
Sure.
In hindsight, they would probably say something different, but they didn't know that anybody would care about these characters in 50 or 60 or 75 years or whatever. The comics were printed on newsprint. They weren't, they were meant to be read and you throw them away, so they weren't, like you said it exactly. It's like, well, we've got, and I don't know which was the Hulk came along first, or I think Fantastic Four was later, but it's like, well, we got the guy who turns green. Let's have a guy who's orange. It's like I was reading a thing the other day, and it was like something that I saw on Instagram, and it was the Vulture from Spider-Man, and this guy was like, why would you have a bird costume and you would color it green? That doesn't make any sense. And somebody was just like, because it looked good on the page. They weren't like putting logic into this. It was an old guy dressed up as a bird.
Well, again, in a 25 cent or 10 cent or whatever they cost at the time newspaper print comic book, it was like the kid next to you in class who was a really good doodler. You'd be like, oh, cool. Like, it's just, your brain doesn't care about logic when you're reading that pulp. You're just like, oh, that's really cool. And I got really into it too, because it's not, you're just like, of course they're trying to save the universe. Of course, that you don't hold it to real word stand. But when you put people in a costume and then you film them, making a stand for what they believe in, it's just, making it three-dimensional. Hell, even making it animated 2-dimensional in a cartoon changes it sometimes. Like Plastic Man, the Fantastic Four worked okay in cartoon form because it was fine being corny. But these movies, while they're willing to be silly sometimes, they don't like to be corny. They want you to say, these are real characters and we don't want them to die, and we don't want other people to die. You know what I mean?
I think like a Fantastic Four, and they're not going to want to do this because they want it to all be in the same universe and all that kind of thing. But I think you do a Fantastic Four like Venture Brothers, basically, and I think you have it take place in the 60s, and
love that.
lean into that. Yeah, lean into that kind of kitschiness and make it very
there's a Reed Richards character in the
and the invisible girl that you
real
could
cool.
And the invisible girl that it's terrifying because you could see her organs and everything.
She turns invisible in layers, right? And he's a really controlling, and I think that's the voice of Stephen Colbert, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Voice? It's just he's got the pipe and he's like, honey, did I say?
So I think you do a 60s version of the Fantastic, because that's when they started out.
Yeah.
And you have it be very it's pre-Watergate, when people trusted institutions and everything, and it's Reed Richards is the smartest guy in the, you know what I mean? You could do a really fun, pulpy thing with it, but they're not going to do that. They're going to have it take place.
The other thing I remember from the Fantastic Four is they struggled with a lot, or at least the Rock character. I don't even know what he's called.
The Thing. Ben Grimm, the Thing.
What he struggled with was everybody treating him like a freak. It was a Frankenstein complex because people were terrified of him. And I think that fit right into that 60s idea too, of like, oh, the commie's the other, the alien, that they don't hold our normal ideas. Like, just because I look different or have different abilities doesn't make me a freak. And I felt like that ran through the Fantastic Four. Like, why are we helping these people? They would kill us, if they wouldn't be held accountable for it, because we're different.
Right.
And there was a real bitterness to it that I think chimed with the 60s too, is this sort of fear of the other, and willfully blind to corruption within. Anyway, we're not talking about Doctor Strange anymore. Let's wrap this up. So, I mean, So would you recommend it?
To, you know, people that are really into the Marvel movies, I think I just, and I'm a lifelong comic fan. I still read comics, but I just increasingly I just feel like these movies are not for me. So if you're really into, Marvel, the MCU, then sure. If you haven't seen it, you might like it, but to anybody else, I can't imagine
Well,
enjoying it too much.
the people who are going to see it no matter what we say are going to see it no matter what we say.
Yeah.
If you've already sat through and listened to all these spoilers, you've probably already seen it, actually. And you have your own opinions about it. Like, you hated it. I didn't feel that strongly about it, but I found it disappointing. I'm not going to try and convince you not to go see this movie or watch it on Disney if you have Disney. But, I didn't particularly love the first one of the Doctor Strange. And
I didn't think it was amazing or anything. I thought it was better than this.
And I didn't particularly like this one either.
Yeah.
There were moments of fun, and there's good things I can say about it, but overall it was really long.
Yeah.
And at the end, I was kind of like, I felt sort of tired and not relieved, but a little exhausted. Like, wow.
You know what though is funny? The very last, so there's two post-credit things in the very last. So they set up this gag where Bruce Campbell, Doctor Strange, does a spell on him where he's punching himself over and over again. So the very last thing is Bruce Campbell and he's punching himself, and then it's like
The spell wears off,
and he goes, "That's the end," or "It's over," or
it's
something.
over.
Like
Yeah.
and I thought, that's how I was like, this is my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's very.
And
so I almost
the fact that they put that in the movie, you're like, so it's a slog.
Yeah,
like,
I almost wondered if
that this movie is like 2.5 hours of you punching yourself in the face without being able to stop it.
It felt like that's what Sam Raimi was saying, that it was, I don't know. So yeah, that was how I kind of felt. It's a good analogy that it felt like you were being punched in the face over and over. I mean, it's not that bad. I mean, it was just so lazy to me. And so I mean, this is a movie that's about like a 4 or a 5 to me,
Well, and it makes me think of the Star Wars prequels and how the expectation, everybody was super excited for them, and then they felt so disappointing. Are they the worst movies ever made? Of course not. Are there good things in those movies? Yep. But
I just felt watching it,
went into them wanting more than they got, and I think I went into this wanting more than I got.
With the, what I thought of, and I don't want to stretch this out too long, but what I thought of some is we watched not long ago, we watched The Frighteners.
Yeah.
And I thought, you could, and you could have let Sam Raimi do this. You could have done a really cool, spooky, still have it be kid friendly, but you could have done a really cool PG-13, horror-ish comic book thing with a lot of neat spooky stuff in it.
Absolutely. Multiverse of Madness sets up a gothic chiller, and I thought there's one scene where America like blows her star-shaped hole open in reality, and
where they're going through all the different universes. That was neat.
And I thought that's really cool.
Yeah.
Some of them are very Marvel comics. Like there's these giant figures that are like, raw, and you're like, what is that? And then one of them, they're paint, and one of them, I mean, it really plays with this idea of like, and that the America character says a couple of times, oh, you don't want to be in that dimension. That dimension sucks, and they have some fun with it. And I thought
that was about 15 seconds.
You could have had a lot more fun with that. And you could have had a lot more fun with the Book of the Dead. And, the parts that were fun could have been a much bigger part of the movie. And I'll check out the Raimi cut, but I mean, you talk about the Zack Snyder cut. I didn't think it was better than you know what I mean? Like I thought it was still a boring, exhausting movie, it was probably better than the one the studio released, but it wasn't like, now that one was great.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, we covered it too and did, but I thought of that film watching this because other than the fact that it's not as dour as those, they have some humor in it, whereas those Snyder movies are like just so dour. But I just kept thinking, people love these Marvel movies, and most of the same problems that I had with the Zack Snyder films, I had with this, where it's just everything's CG and it doesn't look good,
Yeah.
So I'm beating a dead horse, I guess. But
this horse is dead. Chris and Chris Talk Movies at gmail.com. That's our handle. We are on the socials. You can like and subscribe. That would be nice. We'd love that. You can smash that subscribe button, and you can smash the like button too.
Smash them both.
And you can leave us a comment or a suggestion. If you disagree, please be nice and tell us why you disagree, and don't call us names. Hurts our tender feelings.
It does.
What are we doing next time, buddy?
So I thought I was going to watch it last night and that fell through, but we had talked about another multiverse movie, maybe better, I hope, which you have seen, which I have not yet.
100% better.
Everything Everywhere All at Once. So that's what I would.
Everywhere All at Once. Please, let's do that one again. I will watch it again because it's now rentable, right? I saw it in the theater, but if I can rent it, I will watch it again.
Yeah, I think you get it for like $3 on Amazon or whatever. So.
Yeah, it's enough movie to watch this. And now I'll warn you ahead of time, that's a long film. Mm-hmm. It's a lot, and there's a lot going on, but there's a whole lot to talk about. I'm excited. I think we should.
I have not heard anyone either, stuff I've seen online from people or other podcasts that I listen to, or I was driving back from Columbus, Ohio the other night, and I was listening to some XM show, and these two guys on there were like, that's the best movie I've seen this year. I haven't heard anybody say like, I don't like it,
Well, I want to leaven it just a bit, because I hate when I go in to watch the best movie everyone's ever seen. It's absurd. It's an absurd standard to hold a movie to, but there is a lot to talk about. And I really admire the film, and I think that you're going to enjoy it too, whether or not it's the best movie, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot going on.
I don't think I go into anything anymore with, too high of expectations these days. Not that, there are plenty of things I'll go in and, I'll be like, oh, that was great, but so, yeah, I'm excited.
Try and calibrate your expectations, clean your palate somehow, and just go into it with open eyes, because it was a lot. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't expect and was different than I expected. And enough so that I want to watch it again based on what I had heard other people talking about. Oh, this is great, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, I wish that this was one that I had seen, like, hey, watch this movie and let me know what you think. Okay. And completely blank, because, people like it, and they like it for reasons. Mm-hmm. It might be different than you expect. It is long and we're getting old, so plan for that.
Sure.
And it got a laugh. So it's organized in acts. Mm-hmm. And the first one is everything. And then the second act is everywhere. And when we watch the first title card says everything, and you're like, okay. And we watch all this thing and you forget about it. And then there's a second title card that says everywhere. And they got a laugh in the audience because it had taken so long. You're just like, this is the second act? Like, I thought this. So that's not to say it's bad. I'm just, there's a lot to take in this movie.
Nice. Well,
let's do that for next time.
All right.
Listeners, why don't you go watch it as well?
Yeah, if you've not, watch it. I
don't know why I'm doing this voice, but I am. So this is great. Good conversation. We ripped Doctor Strange a new one. I always feel a little bad when we're negative about a movie, because we're gonna make a movie. I'm like,
I was thinking the same thing, because I don't ever, I don't know because I haven't made one, but I have some understanding of. I've said this a lot of times on this show, that it's almost a miracle in my mind that films even come out, like this, where it's, again, this is not an incompetent movie or anything, it just,
No,
so
we
yeah,
hold
I
it
feel
to
bad.
standards. And how many hundreds of millions of dollars did it cost, right? So I mean, you go into it saying,
Yeah.
okay, Marvel, like even if I only hold it to the standard of all other Marvel movies, right? I might say, I mean, I didn't like it as much as Thor Ragnarok. So if you're like ranking only things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I would put this pretty low, actually.
Mhm.
And how many of them are there? There's got to be 30 movies. I don't know how many
Much.
movies they've made, but if we only compare it to those movies, Multiverse of Madness is pretty low on my list, whereas Into the Spider-Verse is pretty high on my list, right? I mean, I could tick off the ones that I think are like, I think the first Guardians of the Galaxy is pretty high on the list,
I know I'm sure in the minority on this, but I would rather just watch a good animated film. I love, so Into the Spider-Verse, that's the animated one, right?
Yes.
I loved that. I
It
thought
was
it was
great,
great,
wasn't it?
you know. Um, but again, who am I? These movies make $1 billion or more, and so they're doing something right.
Well, who are you? You're Chris Huddleston. God
That's
damn
me.
it.
With a guy with a podcast.
You're
Nobody
entitled
else
to your
does
opinion
that.
like everybody else.
Everybody else on the internet.
Nobody listens to this.
Well,
Anyway,
so,
sorry,
all
listener.
right.
You listen to it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's it. That's it, folks. That's all. Enjoy. I hope you're enjoying your summer. I am. And hey, I'm thinking about doing a couple of other screenings of the film festival, maybe a best of
Oh,
in the autumn, and maybe a special horror screening, or even a weekend of a couple of screenings where we get some stuff that I didn't include because it was too scary.
ooh.
And rehash some fan favorites. Is there any chance I could entice you back up here?
It's possible. Yeah.
Possibility.
I had a great time. So
Yeah, it's fun, and it would be less hectic. It wouldn't be everything everywhere all at once. It would just be, one screening or two screenings over a more spaced out period.
yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to go back up sooner rather than later. I just wish it were closer. That's the only downside.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could get you a plane ticket or something and fly you into Bradley, and then you could just use our car. And I don't know. We'll figure it out. We don't need
Okay.
it's on the air, as it were.
Okay,
folks, thanks for listening and watching on the podcast, and we will talk to you next week, baby.